under the existing.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here for our presentation. My name is Estelle Ejo. I'm Nigerian, and I'm a primary school English teacher. So this is me. And I'm here with 10 other colleagues from around the Global South, also English language teaching professionals. And we are recipients of the Hornby Scholarship, which allows you to study for a year in the UK, and then you go back to your context to make a difference. This year, we're studying at the University of Exeter. So we shared stories of taking initiatives in our context. We identified commonalities among our stories, and then we thematized these connections and made it into 3 themes. So we are going to share 4 of these stories with you. We picked just 4. You will hear stories from Mexico, Pakistan, Zimbabwe, and Papua New Guinea. Immediately after one story, someone else would interpret this story and the implications and what it means for us as English language teachers. So if you have the program, you might see a slightly different title than what we have here, which is Disconnect, Sacrifice, and Passion. The reason for this is because when we first started our meetings and discussions, Jeopardy was one recurring thing in almost every story. But then upon subsequent reflections, we realized that it's not all doom and gloom, that there's a reason why we take these initiatives. We enjoy it, we like it. And so we changed that Jeopardy into passion. Now I'm going to hand over to Marilia, who would unpack the title further, telling you what to expect from this presentation. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thank you, Stel. Well, it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about a topic that resonates with many of us, which is teachers taking initiative in their contexts. Well, I'm a teacher in Brazil, and I teach primary learners in a private school in Brazil. They call state schools in the UK, I guess. And I also teach at an education NGO in Brazil. And they're both very different contexts, as you can imagine. But when I was reflecting about what I do when I take initiative, I came up with 3 statements that I found in both of my contexts, the NGO context and the primary school context. And I'd like to read these 3 statements for you. And because I know some of you are also language teachers, feel free to raise your hands if any of these statements resonates with you, all right? So the first one is, I've noticed a lack of motivation in my students. Thank you. I don't feel alone on that. The second one is, sometimes I feel the curriculum, the syllabus, or even the materials, they don't fully meet my students' real needs. And the last one is, I've tried to adapt materials, I've tried to change my approach, or to listen to my students' feedback. Thank you. It's interesting to see that even though we teach very different contexts, we may have similar issues, no matter the age, no matter the country, no matter the students that we teach. And what all of these statements have in common is that they all share a disconnect between what is prescribed to what actually works in our contexts. And when we teachers understand there is this disconnect, we feel the need to take action. We feel the need to take initiative, to propose a change. But proposing a change is not an easy thing to do, because it asks us teachers to be sort of innovators, problem solvers, risk takers, all of these words that we hear. It's part of the job. But when we understand there is a disconnect, we understand we need to take action. But this action may come with many, many challenges. For example, we might stay up late to redesign lessons. We might not have peer support. We might not have even institutional support when we take action, when we take initiative, we may also face sacrifices, even personal sacrifices in our practices. And because it's a challenging thing to do, why do we do it? Why do we take initiative? Why do we propose a change when you see there's a disconnect? Why don't we keep teaching the way we teach? Well, I think we are educators, first of all. And because we are educators, taking initiative also gives us our autonomy. It gives us the ability to make our own decisions. It gives us our teacher agency when we can act in our classroom actively. Our autonomy also sparks our passion for what we do. And I think passion is maybe the reason that has led us to do this job in the first place, to be teachers. And maybe passion is also the feeling that has brought us together here in Edinburgh to discuss English language teaching, isn't it? So let's go to the stories. All of these stories, they stem from a disconnect between what is prescribed to what actually works in their contexts. The stories that you are about to hear, they may face some challenges, some personal sacrifices, but they're also filled with passion for what we do. So, well, by now we must be eager to listen to these stories. I hope you are. Without further ado, I invite Asen to share the first story of the day. Thank you.
All right, I hope this can fix. I'll just roll in. Thank you, Marilia, for a generous introduction. My name is Asen Chandu. I'm from Pakistan. So today I will be talking about my initiative of using English to promote eco-literacy, something that we don't really hear a lot. Because it's my story, I'm going to talk about a little bit about myself. I'm Asen, born in Hyderabad, a city urban, where I was brought up, received my education, and started my professional career as a teacher. But once I was appointed in a city called Shahadadkot in a rural area, a province that borders Balochistan, I realized that teachers in those areas do not have access to the opportunities compared to the teachers based in urban cities like me in Hyderabad. We have opportunities provided by the British Council, RELO, Regional English Language in Pakistan, by the US Department of State, but the teachers there don't have that. In 2022, our province Sindh was affected by the worst flooding in its history. What happened after that? Our educational institutes, all the educational activities had to be suspended. Our campus, Shah Abdul Latif University Shahadadkot campus, was used as a relief camp for the flood victims. So we resumed our educational activities after 2 months, and I asked my students if they knew anything about climate change. To my surprise, many of them had no idea about that. This I thought was a disconnect. And I wanted to ask myself what could be the reason. One reason I thought was that our textbooks don't really localize the climate change. They talk about polar bears, they talk about melting glaciers. They are very important, but not relevant to the local context. Another reason I thought could be because we don't really talk about climate change in our classrooms. I'm talking about L1 also. So another reason would be I, as a student, had been part of all the classrooms throughout my career in Pakistan. My teachers did not talk about climate change in the classrooms. Today, in 2022, at that time, I was a teacher, and my students did not know about that. So I decided to address that and use that opportunity. I, as a teacher, knew that my students were the final year students who will be teachers in the future. I have to do this so that they can repeat in the future. Because floods, we did not have them first time, sadly, and these will be there. So I couldn't do this on my own. I took an initiative, I call it Green Initiative. Why? Because this integrates environmental awareness English language classroom and also aligns with Sustainable Development Goals 13 and 17. I don't really agree with the word combat. We don't have to weaponize this climate change discourse. we have to talk about the peace. We don't need eco-warriors. We need students who want to talk about the peace. So I couldn't do this on my own. I collaborated with an organization called Buland Foundation. Buland Foundation. This is a local organization that is dedicated to save Indus River freshwater dolphins. That was a local environmental issue. So I decided to bring that issue into my classroom, a localized issue, and make it part of my classroom. The idea was that you don't have to be a climate expert to talk about climate change. You don't have to be a qualified scientist or somebody who received his education from a foreign country. You can be a local person. You have local environmental issues. As a student, as a teacher, you can start the initiative. So we conducted a seminar with students. After the seminar, I asked my students to write a 5-line reflection paragraph. After realizing that there was an interest in the issue, I decided to make it part of my classroom and decided to continue that initiative. I introduced something called green routines. So every day, students will come and tell 3 environmentally friendly activities that they do. For example, saving water, reducing food waste, recycling, using bicycle to come to their schools. On other days, I would talk about the surveys to talk about environmental awareness and discussion in Pakistani context. For example, survey conducted by the Gallup Pakistan in 2010. We had the floods in 2010 also. According to that survey, 53% of the participants from Pakistan believed that floods were some sort of divine punishment. Fast forward 2022, September, same survey conducted by the Gallup Pakistan. According to that survey, 85% of the participants believed that climate change had some impact on that. So I decided to bring that discussion into my classroom, make it part of my classroom, start an initiative, a discourse that I thought was missing for a long time. All things were happening, but I had some resistance. Despite some resistance from my colleague who thought I may have been stealing their spotlight because I was just a new teacher there. I may have been called Aqua Chandyo, but I'm just a teacher who's trying to do his job and bring issue that is missing in the classroom. So what happened, we continued the discussion. I did something that I thought was required, and this is the reason I decided to share this story with you, so that you could also take some similar initiatives if you're already not doing them. I also shared this story with my colleague, Bagzud, who is amazing and is going to tell you about that story more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear teachers and educators. I'm really delighted and honored to be a part of this event and to be on the stage. Well, my name is Begzod. I'm from Uzbekistan, and now I will try to share my interpretation of the story, my friend Ahsan's story, and we will try to find some similarities and some commonalities. That is, although geographically we are in a different location, it's very relevant to my experience as well. Well, first of all, having been a state school teacher for over 10 years, the problems that Ahsan has mentioned is not new to me, is not unfamiliar to me. Contextual issues, insufficient support for rural areas. I have also witnessed that, for example, professional development activities and development activities are mostly available for the teachers who are in mostly central areas. But there is divide between the support, the provision between the rural areas and urban areas. And also, like when it comes to unawareness of environmental issues, I would like to say that, yeah, as Ahsan mentioned it, some course books and let's say prescribed by the center, the curriculum, the course books, they do not cater for our students' need. They do not cover our, let's say, some contextual issues. And as teachers, when we want to take some initiative, some action, there might be some resistance from the teachers, from our colleagues. Like Ahsan has mentioned it, maybe it's relevant to many other teachers. When I wanted in Uzbekistan to promote my extensive reading project, it was not easy to encourage teachers to collaborate, especially school teachers, to promote that activity, because the resistance is not only from the center, but also it might be from the teachers that we work with, from our colleagues. It's not easy. But at the same time, it requires some risk and sacrifice. We might spend our energy, we might face some resistance, time, but at the end of the day, like Marilia mentioned it, we have that passion for that. That's why we continue, we persist for this action. And for example, Ahsan mentioned it, the problem that being that Eurocentric view of the problems that, for example, including polar bears, let's say, so yeah, I would say like here, mentioning or teaching our students about the extension of some animals, some other parts of the world, that might be interesting, yes. But do they feel relevant to that problem? For example, the death of the RLC in Uzbekistan, in the we call Karakalpakstan in our one of the parts of Uzbekistan. So you can see the catastrophic incident of the RLC. Now we have almost lost that sea starting from 1977, and now you can see the last one. And we don't have this problem in our course books. I think when we include that, students, they feel more relevant, especially kids living in those areas would feel more relevant to that. Well, what are the takeaways from the story? Yes, we face resistance, some challenges when we take the initiative. But at the end of the day, I think what is important in Ahsan's case, in other projects, like we try to achieve small but meaningful change. When it comes to materials, raising or environmental issues or other, when we want to solve the other issues, what I would like to say, if we see the disconnect that course books, let's say, or materials that come from the center do not meet our students' needs, that as teachers, educators, we need to take initiative and try to solve that gap and disconnect. And most importantly, like we need to make sure that our voice is heard. Yeah, thank you very much. Now I would like to give my turn to Manuel from Mexico. Yeah, thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I will tell you about my story, specifically in the context of higher education in Mexico. Particularly, the disconnect that I identified was that the curriculum and materials didn't adapt to my student needs. And so the proposals that I engaged in had that orientation. And the first place that I went to was specifically my students, because I recognized that in my students there is a lot of motivation, curiosity, and there is already knowledge, which a lot of times could be overlooked. So I worked in close collaboration with my students, and I commissioned the creation of student-led activities. This is not necessarily putting away all the course materials, but they can work together. So the first type of activity that I would like to tell you about, so I'm going to tell you about two. The first one is listening comprehension activities, but created by students. And the second one that you can see on the right, and this is an actual photo, it's a glossary, a mini glossary on international relations, which is created again by my students. So this is not any like publishers' materials. For the first activity, I scaffolded because this was new. So on the first class of the term, I presented the activity for my students. I showed them an example, and then I commissioned them to work in pairs for the rest of the semester. So what students had to do, first, they had to engage with some online material, a video, basically, and they were free to choose the topic they wanted to present to their classmates. So this was in recognition of their interests. So I gave them the freedom and the choice to select what topic they wanted to present to the class, and that's what they chose. The only condition was that the topic be connected to an area of international relations. That was the only condition. And then they created these listening comprehension questions. They were basically 10 questions that they would present to the class. They would play the video, just like a normal listening activity. They would play the video, everybody gave handouts, everybody would answer, and then students would check the answers with their classmates. And well, they presented the answers as you can see. Dealing with listening in this way, it was more treating it as a process, not just as a product, and not just using listening as something to be tested on the exam day. So it was an ongoing process. So as you can see, this started challenging the ways in which I was thinking about testing and also assessment of this particular listening skill. The second activity that I would like to tell you about is I realized that with every listening activity my students created, there was a lot of new vocabulary being generated. And for a long time, to be honest, all this vocabulary was lost. And then, probably like 3 or 4 years later, I said, wait a minute, there is a lot of vocabulary which is being generated by them. So let's do something with that vocabulary. So what students did, from each listening activity, that was the starting point, they selected 10 content words. And so class after class, they would go to a spreadsheet that we all shared as a class, and they would enter these 10 words. So by the end of the semester, there was a collection of 300, 400, 500 words. This was also a very good way to use technology because we could share this file with other classes, with other sections, and we would increase this glossary. Of course, there are challenges. As I said, I recognized that my students had their own motivations, their own interests, and one of the main challenges was that I, as a teacher, had to take a step back. And I gave them freedom, I gave them choice. And as you can imagine, that can go in many different directions. I took the role of a scaffolder, of a curator of information, of an editor, but of course, as you can imagine, that results in more work for teachers especially. So some of the challenges was that for my students, at the beginning, they didn't quite understand why we were taking this direction. And so you have to basically convince them, talk them into this new dynamic. And also for teachers, this might be seen as losing power. Like you are giving your students more authority than they should probably. And one of the main ones, that it's extra work for teachers with this kind of the creation of these activities. So the outcomes, increased workload for teachers. We have that's another task that we have to do on top of everything else that we do. There is a tension in the change of paradigms from from teacher-centered to student-centered. And a lot of the times when we engage in these kind of activities and ideas, we might feel lack of enthusiasm, lack of motivation from other people as well. And of course, that affects us. On the other hand, the positive side is that there is a lot of collaboration between the teacher and students. The use of technology that I mentioned before, looking at language as an ongoing process rather than something to be done at the end. And usually in student evaluation, students would actually say that they felt empowered, and they also felt that the role of the teacher was empowered. which is contrary to the perception. And hopefully, this kind of increases student engagement. So now, my colleague Janan will offer an interpretation of this story. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome. I'm Canan from Turkey, and I will interpret Manuel's story because we share a very similar context. I also work at a state university in my country. So, why do I interpret Manuel's initiative? Because he thought materials and curriculum do not address his students' specific needs and interests. And what a coincidence. So, I also often find myself teaching a curriculum and also materials. I think the curriculum and materials do not quite fit what my students need to succeed. So, who are my students? They are actually young adults, and they are university students in various fields such as molecular biology and genetics, gastronomy, history, international relations. But we are stuck with general English. Sure, they learn the basics of language, but how does that help them read academic articles or talk to international chefs or customers when they start working? So they need more than general English and standard content. So that's why Manuel took some initiative and he involved his students into the decision-making process. So he gave his students an opportunity to prepare their own glossaries, listening activities, and he even modified the assessment. Probably you forgot to talk about it, right? Okay, and so now I forgot what I'm going to say. So similarly, I also asked my students about what they actually need, and they told me that they struggle in understanding and reading academic articles. So I brought in a lot of articles on genetics and gave my students and let them pick what to study. So suddenly they were not students anymore. They were the active participants of the whole process. And they took the responsibility of their own learning. And similarly, in my gastronomy classes, with my gastronomy students, I asked them to go and find some international chefs in a hotel or in a restaurant in Istanbul and conduct an interview with them and record them. And I told them that this would be part of their final assessment. So, guess what happened? They enjoyed the whole process, and they told me that, teacher, that was the best activity we had done so far, because they realized how important English is for their job. And also, they understood that actually the most satisfying part of their job is to talking to customers who appreciate their dishes. So I think these stories mean, or these stories reflect a crucial reality. That means teaching cannot be static. It should be dynamic, it should be responsive, and also it should be student-centered. So we should let our students take some responsibilities of their own learning, and also we should foster their learning autonomy. So, consequences of taking initiatives. By the way, is that really easy to take those initiatives? The answer is no, because Manuel's students showed resistance at first, because preparing all those listening activities, materials, they would take a lot of time. And also my gastronomy students told me, come on teacher, don't be so enthusiastic. We are not going to speak to food in English in the kitchen. But then we took initiatives, we got good results, and then we shared them with other teachers. But they don't seem interested at all. Why? Because in our institutions, taking such initiatives, making some alterations in the curriculum are not only unwelcomed, but also criticized because they are trying to give a standard education, and I think you are familiar with this. So these kind of initiatives or changings are, so we need to take those kind of initiatives by asking the institution administration all the time. So it is very risky in our contexts. So I asked Manuel then, why do we take those initiatives? Because we put a lot of effort. So we sacrifice our time, our energy, and even our well-being. So why do we do it? And then he told me, I want the learning to be meaningful, enjoyable, and relevant for them. And then he asked me the same question. And I said, I feel responsible for meeting the language needs of my students. When I see a problem, I cannot just stand by doing nothing. I need to I need to see their progress. It makes me happy. And also, this is something that I really need for my teacher identity to be able to continue my teaching. So thank you for listening to me. And now we are going to Zimbabwe, a very different context. And my colleague, Melusi, will come on the stage.
Thank you. It's better like this. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Melusi. I'm from Zimbabwe, a beautiful country in the southern part of Africa. Prior to being a Hornby scholar, I worked as a volunteer refugee English language teacher at Tongogara refugee camp in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is home to about 23,000 refugees from the Great Lakes region of Africa. That being the case, the global policy on refugee education is that refugees have to be integrated within the communities in which they are resettled. So these refugees that are in Zimbabwe come from French and Portuguese, mainly speaking countries. And Zimbabwe is a former British colony, and English is the medium of instruction, as well as the official language within the context. So the disconnect within my context is that refugees find themselves in classrooms learning English, a language that they do not understand or did not have prior exposure to, but it's not all of them. Some would have had that experience. So what then it does for the students is that it creates issues of they're in the classroom, you're being taught in a language that you do not understand, and there's an issue of, in terms of education, you're going to be left behind, because English is not only a subject in itself, but it's also taught for the rest of the other subjects that they have to be taught. So what I then realized is that, okay, this is the situation. Teachers in my context are lowly paid, and not many of them would have been interested in giving extra time to help the students in terms of their English language journey. So what I then did was that I approached the UNHCR coordinator within the camp, as well as the education administrators to say, I was thinking, is it possible if we can have a situation where high-achieving refugee students, as well as we've got local students within those schools, attending those schools, because there's a primary school as well as a secondary school. Is it possible if outside school hours, high-achieving students can assist other students in their learning journey? Because we don't want them to be left behind, because refugee futures in the camps where they're resettled, they're uncertain. They can be there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So education does remain important for them. So That being the case, we're given the permission to proceed with the initiative. It was a group of the secondary students as well as a few number of primary school students who volunteered. It was not without its challenges. There were challenges along the way. Mentees, those that were being mentored, found English to be difficult at times. The mentors themselves at times found that, okay, it's the mentees themselves are taking time to grasp grammar, rules, vocabulary, and the rest of English language itself. And these were the challenges we faced, as well as a lack of resources, since this was a refugee camp. But besides those challenges that we faced, there were a bit of positive outcomes that came out of the situation. I would say in 2022, for the national, because there are 2 exams that are written at grade 7 as you're transitioning into high school, as well as the final secondary school education. And there was a noticeable increase in the percentage for primary school students who were transitioning into high school, as well as teachers noticed that at first students in the classrooms, because of the language barriers, they were not able to participate, but given time, they're now able to participate in the classroom and contribute. And previous mentees also became mentors along the process. I'll leave the floor to my colleague, Mojgan.
Okay. Coming?
Technical issues. Yeah, just turn it off.
Thank you so much.
Hello. My name is Mojgan. I'm an English teacher from Iran. Like my colleague Melusi, I have the experience of teaching refugees, but here in UK at Coventry Refugee Center as a teacher assistant. Today I will be reflecting on Melusi's story and how his peer mentoring project helped to boost motivation and build up trust. So, as he said, Zimbabwe shelters a lot of refugees, mostly coming from French, Portuguese-speaking countries. So, it means for the learners learning in a different language while their mother tongues are sidelined. So, it could impose them a lot of linguistic, emotional challenges. So, Melusi had to deal with these challenges, and that was when this peer mentoring project proved effective. So, there are 23 languages in Zimbabwe, and from grade 4th on, English dominates the education system. So, my colleagues saw those refugee kids struggling, juggling languages. Sometimes they were feeling lost, or they lost motivation and lost confidence in their learning. He had to do something. So, you know, as I told you, I have the experience of teaching refugees, so I know that there is even a bigger hurdle, and that is trust. You know, refugees find it really hard to trust people. It includes the education system and the teacher. So, the first step the teacher needs to take is building up that trust, which is not easily gained. After having experienced trauma, and then I think refugees could be kind of hesitant to engage in the learning process, and they are doubtful to attend. Sometimes they withdraw, sometimes they just miss sessions, and added to the anxiety they bring from their past. And let's admit that English learning is overwhelming. So there is a lot to deal with for those refugee kids. So my colleague started this peer mentoring project by pairing high-achieving learners with the ones who were struggling, the ones who mastered to speak English kind of fluently with the newcomers. So these after-school sessions, Malusi dedicated his time and effort to show the students that I am your teacher. I am genuinely interested in your success. And don't you think that could kind of trigger the learners to establish trust in their teacher and in the learning environment? So the result of this project were quite amazing. Boosted motivation, increased classroom engagement, and better academic achievements. Let's see, oh, I'm going to change this. Let's see how peer mentoring could improve motivation and build up trust. So first, we can say that it creates a safe space for refugee learners. They feel isolated, they are unsure whom to trust, and then a peer mentor could have the potential to be a reliable friend for a refugee kid. So this kind of relaxing environment will allow refugee kids to engage more openly, and it will give them the courage to get involved in some other activities such as the speaking and writing. It reduces the fear of failure. You know, learning from a peer is a lot less intimidating than learning solely from the teacher. And I think, sorry. So it also reduces fear of failure. So refugee kids feel like, okay, this is my friend. I'm fine to make mistakes. This gives them the courage to make mistakes and get engaged in the learning process. It also offers role models. They see kids who have been through similar challenges, mentoring them. This is like, okay, success is achievable. This is a tangible proof that could teach them, okay, trust this education system, trust your teacher, trust your mentors. One day you will be like them, you can be mentoring people. So it will establish like confidence and trust in the system. It also boosts independence, because I think like mentors, compared with the teacher, impose less pressure to the learners. So they feel like, okay, I can make mistakes, I can go forward little by little, so it will establish confidence in their learning process. It also helps them build up connections because some of the mentors are locals. So they know the norms, they know the culture of the host country, and they can help their mentees build up connections and get to know the culture and norms of Zimbabwe. It also has mutual benefits for both mentors and mentees. Mentors are gaining confidence to practice like leadership skills, and mentees will start trusting their learning environment. And the last one, it will set achievable goals. So mentees will set like manageable small goals to teach the refugee kids that, okay, little by little you can progress, you can be successful, and then when they achieve small goals, they will be more, let's say, trustful to themselves and to the learning environment. Finally, trust is the foundation of every successful learning process. So, you know, these refugee kids are going through a lot of linguistic, emotional challenges. So my colleagues' dedication of time and energy and effort shows these refugee kids that I am genuinely invested in your success. I want you to be successful in future. So he kind of tried to build up this trust between himself and the refugee kids. Trust is hard to gain, but when it is established, it is the key to unlocking motivation, confidence, and a lot of, let's say, academic achievements. I think at Tangagora, if I am pronouncing it well, Malusi changed learning struggles to a strength. And I have seen it myself in the context, like refugees feeling isolated, fearful, traumatic, and then they gain confidence, not only in English skills, but also in their sense of belonging. So yeah, I have witnessed it personally. It is not only about better grades in English, it is also about inclusion and growth. I think as English teachers who are teaching refugees, we have the responsibility to provide our learners with these opportunities. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tusa to share her story from New Guinea.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Tusa, and I'm from the beautiful and diverse country of Papua New Guinea. In case you might be wondering where Papua New Guinea is, it's right there in the Pacific Ocean. It's a small island country. So before I share my story, let me give you a brief background of my context. So Papua New Guinea is 50 years old, and it's made up of around 10 million. The population is 10 million, 80% of which live in the rural and remote areas. And the country is very diverse in terms of language. We have 850 plus languages. We also have so many cultures, traditions, ethnic groups. And the country is also known for many geographical challenges. And you can see in the picture there, we have scattered islands. We have very big, like fast-flowing rivers, rugged mountains, thick jungles, and this 80% of people live in those areas. So this makes it difficult for basic government services to reach those areas. And the schools and classrooms that are located in those places often lack resources. So that's the problem that we have. Okay, now back to my story. I spent the last 10 years teaching English to in-service teachers at Papua New Guinea Education Institute, and this is the only in-service teacher training college that is located in the capital of Port Moresby. So back there, I work with primary school teachers who come for in-service training, and they come to take up the program called Advanced Diploma in Teaching English and Literature in Service. And the aim of the program is to help teachers upgrade their qualification and to enhance the knowledge of English and literature. So one of the modules that I teach in this program is teaching children's literature, and this module is special because it's not just about children's books, but it's about preserving cultural knowledge and reviving the tradition of storytelling in the classroom, because we have so many cultures and traditions which are mostly oral, in oral forms. So what we do in this module is we also help teachers to create and to improvise, because they will be going back to those schools which are located in the rural areas and which are often under-resourced. So they have to improvise and they have to create. But during the course of the program, many teachers expressed concerns about lack of resources, especially reading materials in their schools. And I've also noticed that the primary school English syllabus actually encourages teachers to create their own reading materials when the right resources are not available, and it's there. So, and this is an ongoing issue where many public rural schools in Papua New Guinea have struggled with limited resources over the years. So as a teacher educator and as someone passionate about teaching English and literature, I felt the need to bridge this gap. So I asked myself, how can I empower these teachers to be more resourceful? That's when I decided that instead of just talking about storytelling and literature in the classroom, I would make it a practical hands-on experience. So as part of the summative assessment, I asked these teachers to create a portfolio, which is a collection of traditional stories, poems, chants, and rhymes from their local communities. So these teachers worked in groups of 5. Each member contributed at least 2 stories, 2 poems, and 2 rhymes or chants from their communities. And the final product was a bound portfolio, which they submitted for assessment. And more importantly, each teacher made copies of the portfolio to take back to their classrooms to use as reading materials. This was more than just an assignment. It was an initiative to empower these teachers to be creative, because they need to be creative in their classrooms. So when these teachers went back to their schools, some took the initiative further by organizing in-service workshops for their colleagues on how to create reading materials. And of course, they received support from the local school administration and the inspectors, but not everyone was able to continue the initiative. Some faced personal challenges. Others were hesitant to share this idea with their colleagues. But despite all of this, the feedback was positive. And these teachers shared their ideas, their initiative, their challenges through the cohort WhatsApp group, which we create every year for each cohort. So this became a community of support, making sure that this initiative didn't just stop when they left the training colleagues. Yeah, so that's the outcome and the challenges that they faced. And so seeing these teachers embrace this initiative and share it with others reassures me that this can make a lasting impact in the classroom. This initiative is not just about solving the problem or addressing lack of resources, but it's about empowering teachers to be creative, collaborative, and to preserve cultural knowledge in the classroom. That's the important thing that we are looking at. So this has been truly inspiring to see teachers take charge of their own learning and share it with others. But what does this story truly mean? To help us unpack this further, I would like to ask my colleague, Augustina, to share her interpretation of the story. Thank you. Over to you, Augustina.
Hello. My name is Agustina Laporta, and I'm from the city of Buenos Aires, Argentina. There. So my country is truly in the south, so I had to cover it up. So what am I doing? Interpreting her story from Papua New Guinea. Because I had to? No. But I really, I really resonated with her story because in my country, we also, like the ministries of education don't prescribe obligatory materials, like mandatory materials. So we're free to choose, like create, select, curate, or even create our own materials. And that is great because it is the responsibility of the teacher to develop the materials that cater for their learners' needs, to their own contexts. The problem is that the freedom to choose is also a double-edged sword. Because yes, they say, okay, you're free to do what you can with what you have. So that means the government doesn't or even cannot afford to provide materials. So it's on us, the teachers, to come up with the materials. And that takes a lot of time. So for example, if I say, okay, I want to talk about climate change, I don't want to talk about the polar bears, I'm going to talk about the recent floods that have happened in a city where lots of people have lost their homes or even family members. That is really good, but we have to go and prepare the materials, find the materials. And AI helps, but you still have to devote a lot of time, and you have to know how to do it. I really liked what Tusa did because she listened to the student teachers, and she asked them, they just complained that they didn't have ready available materials. So what she did was, when we're teachers at higher education, we sometimes have WhatsApp groups, and it was a cohort WhatsApp group. I'm sorry, today I'm very spacey, so I'm going to check the notes. Because then we're going to say, you've spoken for 20 minutes, there's no time for Q&A. Q&A is the worst, the best, so, okay. So, supporting teachers, I'm confusing slide number 3 with number 4. Okay, so Tusa listened. The problem is that they hadn't ready available materials. And So this WhatsApp group, this cohort WhatsApp group, went beyond the teaching, and it became a community in which teachers, after finishing the program, could share their success stories, but also challenges in implementing what they have learned. And it also, this WhatsApp group, I should have put the logo here, this WhatsApp group became a space for professional growth, not only in terms of learning new practical knowledge, but also by feeling empowered, because they wanted to come back and recreate the workshops in their own schools. And they could replicate their training because they felt supported by TUSA as a teacher training, but also by different authorities at different levels, the school leaders, the supervisors, and the inspectors. Sorry. So, but the problem is, that's a great story, but what happens with the silent voices? So, of course, TUSA listened, but we don't really know why some of her students didn't participate in a WhatsApp group. They went silent. Maybe they didn't have time. Maybe they were shy. They didn't want to share. We don't really know what happened there. Because when the initiative comes from the teacher, like in Asan's case or Manuel's case, we know that it's because they want to do it, they're passionate to do it. But if the initiative, the developing initiative comes from the outside, we should do a proper needs analysis to check what they truly need and then do a proper evaluation afterwards. I asked TUSA why she did it, and first of all, she wanted the initiative to be sustainable. That's why she encouraged her students to go back and do the workshops in their own schools. So these workshops are at the remote schools, yeah. But she would really like to go to the schools and really know the impact it has, to know what are the challenges they're facing, to really understand and better support them. She really does that in the WhatsApp group because she wants to feel connected. But the thing is that takes time and energy. And like each year, new teachers come. So that means the WhatsApp group keep adding. At some point, she won't be able to do it. She's not paid for that. So we have some budget and time constraints. And it will become unsustainable. I think that's the last slide. So, but what I really take away from this story is that, okay, maybe the curriculum is great, there's a great idea, but if we don't materialize it into something concrete, real, it becomes just like wishful thinking. And teachers are really eager to do it. We really want to do it, but if we don't have support from local authorities, if we have support from local authorities, like our impact will be much greater. And now, my colleague, Janita, will round up the session before the Q&A.
Hello everyone, I'm Janita Ekanayaka from Sri Lanka. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to synthesize what all my fellow scholars have been presenting so far. So having listened to their inspiring stories and their insightful interpretations, I'm sure that you are now sufficiently convinced that in English language teaching, there almost always exists a gap, a disconnect, or discrepancy between what the central administrations prescribe and our lived classroom realities. In other words, this disconnect is a ubiquitous phenomena in English language teaching and learning. It is also important to remember that this disconnect can be manifested in multiple forms. It can be related to pedagogical practices, learner needs, materials, curricula, or it can even be a combination of several of these. Eheson's story exemplified the lack of training opportunities for English language teachers from rural areas, and also the unavailability of materials that capture local and relatable issues. Janan and Manuel explained how learner needs can be ignored by offering general English programs where English for specific purposes programs are essential. Like in Melusi's and Moshgan's stories, imposing mainstream policy-driven pedagogical practices that tend to ignore social psychological complexities of displaced migrant learners will not ensure effective language learning and acquisition. Our friend Thusa, on the other hand, had identified that school teachers did not have enough resources to teach what is prescribed by the curricula. So it becomes rather obvious that as ELT practitioners, we all need to take some initiatives to address these disconnects in order to make English language teaching and learning meaningful and effective in our contexts. As my fellow scholars explained, sometimes we might need to develop materials that capture local issues and learner needs. Sometimes we might have to develop a peer-led support system to support mainstream practices, or even to collaborate with trainee teachers to develop materials that supplement the national curricula. If the mainstream practices seems to ignore social psychological complexities, then perhaps as a teacher, you need to go a step further and establish a safe and secure learning environment for your learners. It is only through such Decentred initiatives that we can make English language teaching and learning effective in our contexts. So we have to keep in mind, however, that decentering of ELT, as we refer to it in our presentation, is neither a utopian concept nor a pleasure cruise. It comes with a lot of sacrifices, commitment, dedication, and in certain extreme cases, it might even lead to jeopardy. To start with, we can all understand that whenever we try to implement novel changes, whenever we try to introduce novel changes, it comes with a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice. We have to make sacrifices in terms of time, energy, sometimes money, and sometimes we might sacrifice bits and pieces of our personal lives as well. So Ehsan had to reach out to the Bullens Foundation, and Manuel and Thusa had to carefully go through each and every material developed by their learners and edit them in order to compile. Melusi, who was already volunteering, had to spend extra time with his learners to support them, to guide them, even that without any remuneration. Sometimes the consequences of such decentred initiatives might cause consequences beyond the obvious. Sometimes you might face some resistance from your fellow teachers who are critical of you, who think that you are just trying to steal the spotlight. Or if the change that you're trying to implement seems to be of huge magnitude, perhaps, for an example, if you're trying to replace a general English program with an English for specific purposes program, then your professional character might even be questioned by the very own administration of your institute. And this might potentially threaten your job security. So if such is the case, then the question arises, why should we take initiatives? What do we as ELT practitioners gain out of taking such initiatives? Well, it is our understanding that such decentred initiatives gives us the opportunity to try new things, to experiment new things. Through this novelty, it increases our motivation, and by extent, it increases our passion that we have for our profession. And also such decentering attempts, such decentering endeavors would give us an opportunity to try out the theoretical concepts that we learn from teacher development programs and to see for ourselves the adaptability and applicability of those theories. Above everything else, what makes us happier as genuine ELT practitioners than the very success of our own students. So with that, after considering all these pros and cons, we come to the conclusion that such decentred initiatives are essential to make English language teaching effective, meaningful, and successful in our local contexts. However, we have to be mindful of the possible negative consequences that it might bring about. This awareness will help us carefully navigate these challenges and lessen or reduce the negative consequences. So with that, I conclude our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and for being with us for 1 hour. So we are now open for any questions and comments. So I invite all my fellow scholars to join me. So yeah, if time permits, questions. Yeah.
In pairs, right? Sorry.
Do you have any questions to us? Photo. Okay.
Yeah, we need to move a little. No, move. Yeah. Okay.
Q&A because you were taking a picture.
Okay. 8 minutes. But you have to ask questions. What was the picture? Yes.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for the very well put together presentation. It must be very hard for to cooperate. That was a fantastic job. So I feel very resonated because we share similar problems back home in Vietnam about textbook not being relevant to the context that we are working on. Can you sum up the story? Can you share some more stories of students refusing to take initiative? Because that was one of the problems that I had. One of my students being future early childhood teachers, and they are going to speak Vietnamese to the kids. So they are, if you happen to do a lot of things like asking them to go to the cathedral and do a presentation and record a presentation in English about the cathedral, they might say, why are we doing so much? Because we are not going to use the language anyway. Have you ever faced any problem that the students refusing to take initiative for the learning?
Yeah. I think I can say a few words about it. Yes, because I faced such resistance. Because when I told my students to go and find a chef in a restaurant, for example, in Istanbul, it is not something easy. So some of the students really didn't want to do it. And that's why, actually, I said that this would be part of the assessment. And because some students were very convinced and they really believed that it would be very helpful and very different, because for the first time in their lives they will see the real kitchen and working environment. So the majority were actually they were convinced and they said, okay, we could do it. But some students said that we cannot do it. And also in the process they came to me saying that we couldn't find any chefs. Then I found some chefs. And it was really difficult. So I think throughout the whole process, we need to ask our students why they don't want to do it and how we can help them. So we should always make them feel that we are there only for them. And also, personally, I'm a very flexible teacher. If a student has an anxiety, for example, to talk to someone else, then I could even change it a little bit only for that student. So maybe we need to understand their needs, and also we should involve them into the process as much as we can, so that the resistance will be low. And then also we should make them, I think, feel that we want the best for them. This is not for me. This is for you. Mm-hmm. And I also sometimes say that I have some experience. I mean, I've been a teacher for about 17 years. And I say that, okay, I can understand you. Yes, you are right. It is very difficult. But so maybe talking in person to that student might help. But it's difficult. Yes, of course. It's not easy. Would you like to say something? Or
no, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Hello. Well done.
Thank you.
Just a comment, actually, if you don't mind. This disconnect, yes, which you've highlighted. I've just been reflecting on the very interesting question you raised, which is why do we do this?
Yeah.
You know, why do we commit ourselves to extra work? We all do.
Yeah, we all do.
I'm sort of amazed by this, by teachers getting together and doing things outside the class time. And I was just reflecting that there is a disconnect between the teacher and student.
Yeah.
And we want to bridge that gap somehow. So we go outside to find ways to do that.
Yeah.
Just as you found a connection together,
Yeah.
you wanted to find a connection. So I think there's this desire for us to connect with other people who are our students. And that's a very strange situation we are in, for us to be with students in an artificial.
Yeah.
I just reflected on
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly. Any other comments?
Comments, could be comments.
Or, okay, thank you so much. Thank you for participating. Okay, there is one more question, sorry.
It's not a question, it's
Okay.
not a comment. I believe that, thank you very much, first of all. I want to thank Hornby Trust as well, so that they identify change managers in different countries, and these change managers, they really get empowered through these programs, and they go back to their home countries, and they also touch the lives of different people in their own countries. If there are any Hornby alumni in this group, we will have a group photo inviting them as well. Yeah? Okay, I will say Hornby alumni.
Manuel, do we turn this off? Yeah. Shall we? Yeah, move it over there.